Good evening, everyone, and welcome into Beyond the Boxscore, our weekly program where we break down all the latest high school sports action, as well as the college and the pros, here on Pulaski Citizen Live. I'm your host, Mark Mize, joined once again by my co-host, Chandler Harmon. Chandler, it's Christmas week, and we're getting closer and closer to district play. It's been a fun non-district season, though, with some really interesting matchups.
Absolutely, Mark. And speaking of those very interesting matchups, last weekend got the opportunity to go to the Giles County Christmas Classic, actually. It's been an exciting week of basketball with Giles County playing 3 Alabama teams in just a few days span. And, a lot of fun matchups that we've seen as, we get towards the end of this section of the season.
And some strong returns in those tournaments as well for the Bobcats and Lady Bobcats. The Richland Christmas Classic will be next week, and I think at least one of the Giles County teams will be playing in that. And so we'll get you more information on that and that scheduling as we go forward. But, of course, getting closer and closer to the games that really matter most. At the end of the day, people forget, even more so than football, these non-district games are basically exhibitions, and the main goal is just making sure everyone's healthy and making sure everyone's improving and creating kind of a cohesive team so that you can make that true stretch run.
Absolutely, Mark. And I think that we've seen some great progression from all 4 of our local teams. I've gotten to cover the Bobcats in this stretch, and they've, Lady Bobcats have really grown defensively and offensively, and I think the same can be said for the boys as well.
Yeah, getting people healthy. You got those football players back. You're getting them more and more acclimated every week. And so it's been a fun one so far and much more to come. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick timeout, and we'll be back with our Giles County segment here on Beyond the Box Score.
For over 50 years, PES Energize has been proudly powering our community in Pulaski and Giles County, Tennessee. We're more than just an electric utility. We also offer internet and phone services. Our commitment to our customers and our community is what sets us apart. We're dedicated to providing safe, reliable, and innovative services. At PES Energize, we believe that serving you is a privilege. We're here for all your energy needs. Visit PESenergize.com or call us today.
When it comes to real estate, Haney Realty and Property Management is the team you can trust. Our extensive knowledge of the market and industry allows us to help our clients with any real estate need. We know how to get results. So whether you're looking to buy, sell, or rent, let us put our expertise to work for you. Call us today at 931-347-9150 or visit HaneyRealtyPM.com to learn more. Haney Realty and Property Management, your best friend in real estate.
And we're back with our Giles County segment here on Beyond the Box Score. Once again, I'm your host, Mark Mize, joined by my co-host, Chandler Harmon. Chandler, some Christmas tournament action for Giles County. And once again, as we said in the first segment, some strong returns. Just first off, kind of what was the Christmas tournament? This is the first one I think you had a chance to cover in person. Kind of what was the atmosphere like there at the Hardin Mayfield?
Mark, it was super exciting. There was a lot of different fans from different teams throughout the day. I was there for the Summertown game, and then I left for a little bit. Had to actually go get my car tire fixed. So I missed the other 2 games between that and Giles, but there was a lot of fans there that were excited for all the different teams, and it was just a great atmosphere. A lot of different basketball people from all the way in Alabama came up here to watch those Giles games, so it was really exciting to be there.
Back whenever I was the sports editor, the Keith Davis Memorial was the one that they would always do for the girls, and I think the boys would play in one for Columbia Central. So you need to bring it home. Like I said, I'm not sure how many years they've done it because Wade was taking over as sports editor, but getting to bring the Christmas Classic home, really cool. And once again, that's not even the only one that they're going to play in too, because they're going to play in the Richland one as well.
And it's absolutely exciting that we have 2 Christmas Classics here in this county. The girls team I thought did really good over the Christmas Classic, and I thought the boys team did pretty good as well.
So talking about the girls first, girls 9-3 on the season. Last time I saw them, they had a little trouble there against Fayetteville City, but it sounds like they have rebounded really well and may have swept that Christmas Classic you're talking about.
They did, Mark, and I got to see them in the Lauderdale County game. Didn't get to see them against Colbert County, but in the Lauderdale game, saw some really great defense. I've talked about how great I think they're going to be defensively. That game really, exemplified what they can be. With Acaria Reese really using her height, probably one of the biggest strengths they have is that they have a really tall player on their team, and she really, really used that well. And I lost count of how many blocks she had in the first half alone.
And for those who don't know much about Lauderdale County, since I've been around here the last 11 years, I think Lauderdale has won at least 3 state championships there in Alabama. They're either 3A or 4A, I forget, but a really, really strong historical program. And so, I mean, that's a quality win. Haven't seen them this year, but I mean, right now, Giles is beating some programs where it kind of, you turn around and look and you say, wow. I mean, they beat Lincoln earlier this year. Lincoln's always great. And so, it's not just that they're getting early season non-district wins. They're getting quality wins too.
Absolutely, Mark. And I think that as the season goes on, we're seeing that this is a Lady Bobcats team that has grown a lot from last year, went 12-13, I believe, last year. So already, ahead of where they were last year at this point in the season, just kind of really taking it in stride, trying to figure out, who's going to be their leading scorer, who's going to be the answer for this. And I think that they are starting to put all that together as we get ready to start playing in district.
Well, 2 years ago, they went from 4 to 12 wins. At this rate, they'll go 12 to 20 this year. And so that would be great to see. I think they're going to be a really competitive team in that district there that is going to have a lot of really fun local matchups there with teams like, of course, Tullahoma, Lawrence, Marshall, just a lot of really good historic rivalries for Giles County. And so it's been a lot of fun, and it should continue to be a lot of fun. On the boys' side there, they're 7-4 on the campaign. They're probably a little more volatile than the girls are in the sense that they've had some players injured more than the girls have. They had the football players that they got back kind of late because it was such a great football run for O'Connor and Giles County there. And so they're a team that it feels like they're now, the last couple of weeks, really starting to hit their stride now that they have all their players back.
And, Mark, I think that they're a team that we still despite finally having all the players all there, I think that, we still haven't seen them to their full potential as they still all acclimate to it. I think Xavier Hanna's stepped up and started to figure out his role for the team. And I think that he, as Coach Campbell after the matchup yesterday talked to me about, that Hanna's going to be one of those guys as they start to get into district play. He's going to be a player that they need to step up and take a commanding role for them. And I think that he's starting to really put it all together for them.
Hanna is just a physical presence that I don't think they get anywhere else. I mean, just watching him versus Fayetteville City, I mean, he's kind of that role that you would think of as an enforcer. And so getting him back from that collarbone injury that he had during football, I think was really huge there. They have a lot of guys who are settling into roles. You talked about Deshaun Howard earlier off air, coming off the bench. He's been kind of their second premier scorer behind Kason Howard there, who, of course, everyone who's seen Kason plays knows what he can do. I mean, this feels like a team where players are going to have their roles, and really, I think it's all going to come together for them.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And Deshaun Howard, I think, is one of those ones that we've seen blossom over the past few games. I think that, where Campbell wants to put him yet is to be determined, but I think wherever he goes, he's going to blossom into a good role where he'll play contributing minutes, averaging, I think, around 15 points right now per game over the past few games since coming back from his injury. And I think that we'll continue to see him grow. And if he can get into a role where he's averaging 15, you have Kason Howard averaging about 20, you're probably doing pretty good each matchup.
Oh, without a doubt. You get 35 players out of a couple guys. I mean, that's a great matchup there. And so talking to Campbell after that Fayetteville City game, one of the things I thought was most interesting was the fact that it was only the second game / practice they'd had, including summer, in which they had literally every player. And so, I mean, that's just unbelievable that, they'd spent that much time with guys out for injury, guys out for football, guys out just for other responsibilities that they have there. And so, like I said, I think that this just makes it a scenario in which you expect this team just to get better and better as they have more time and more reps with each other, not only in the games. I think what's happening in practice right now is probably just as, if not more important.
I agree, Mark. And I think that we've seen them also really try to test these guys for some of the matchups they've scheduled. Muscle Shoals was a very good matchup for the Bobcats. They came to town the other day, and that's probably one of the most physically dominant teams that they're going to take this season, and athletic teams. I think that is going to be one of those things on top of all the practice. And, Campbell talks about how great their practices are and how that gets them all ready. That's a matchup that they're going to learn a lot from. I think that we could see both the Bobcats teams really compete this year.
And so finally, just one more time, Christmas tournament and then also Muscle Shoals. Just what are some of your takeaways from what you saw the last couple games for the Bobcats?
I think that we'll start with the boys. The boys team, I think that they're starting to figure it out. I think that they've got some areas that they can still grow. We've seen them, get leads and kind of start to, get into a little bit of a scoring slump. That's something that I hope that they can figure out and Campbell's indicated that they are figuring it out pretty quickly. I think that for both the Bobcats and the Lady Bobcats, defense is going to be a big part of what they do. They held the Muscle Shoals team to just a handful more points than they got, unfortunately, with the boys Bobcat team losing. But that's a Muscle Shoals team that's very good at scoring and getting out ahead of them. And I think so. We'll see defense will be very important to them. Scoring, Case Howard, still trying to figure out who the other guy will be that needs to score when he can't. I think that could be Deshaun Howard at this point in the season. And then for the Lady Bobcats, defense. That is their bread and butter this season. I think that that's going to be something they really hang their hat on. But they have a great wealth of scorers, and I think that's going to be something that really, when they get into that district stretch, will come into play.
And that was one thing that I kind of noted about that Fayetteville City game, in the sense that Giles had one of their top 3 scoring games that they've had all year, but it was either 10 or 11 three-pointers. Fayetteville City just got hot in a way that they usually don't, but there's a team that was so predicated on the three-pointer. So that night, defense really didn't go their way because Fayetteville City was hitting some crazy shots there on the perimeter. And so, wow, that's awesome. And honestly, I'm really excited. I'll get a chance to see them a few more times. But of course, Chandler and Scott Stewart are doing a great job of, bringing that along as well. And, being able to bring those games to you on WKSR. And of course, also what you're seeing each week in the Pulaski Citizen and on our website as well. And so it's been a lot of fun, Chandler. And I hope that y'all continue to have a great season over there.
Absolutely, Mark. And I hope the same for Richland as we see the season go on.
Of course. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and get our Richland segment now in just a second, as I'll be talking to Dylan Manus here on Beyond the Box Score.
When it comes to insurance, Winterburr and Associates Insurance is the team you can trust. We offer coverage for your home, auto, business, and more. We work hard to find the best policy for you at the best price. Our personalized service means we take the time to understand your needs and make sure you understand your options. We want you to feel confident and secure with your insurance policy. Let us make insurance simple for you. Get a quote today at winterburrinsurance.com or call us at 931-363-8638.
And we're back here on Beyond the Box Score for our Richland segment. I'm Mark Mize. He's Dylan Manus. And Dylan, we had a chance to see Richland versus Lawrence County this week of Christmas. Raiders on both sides have been having a pretty good season so far. Lady Raiders are 7-1 on the year. The Raiders are 5-3. And so Lady Raiders picked up victories over Eagleville and also versus Lawrence County since last time we had a chance to do a show. And so things really looking up in non-district play for the girls.
Yeah, this is the time to get your feet under you, just see what works overall as far as players, how they gel together. Of course, we know this is a Lady Raider team going back to last year with so much depth, so much size and skill at every position that I would say, as I was telling Jennifer last night, there's nothing that they can't do. It's almost a pick your poison type of situation, whether you want to go inside, outside. When you have 3 bigs like they have that can shoot from outside, they're really point forwards, it makes for a dangerous team. And certainly they've proven that consistently over the course of the non-district season. And it's getting them set up for what we're about to see in district play.
Right. We're only about 2 weeks away from the start of district play now, as this is the week of Christmas. First, I wanted to talk about that Eagleville game. Of course, I know you didn't get a chance to see it, but really the story of the night, Eagleville probably down a little bit based on what you usually expect from them on the Lady Eagles side, but still a competent team this year. And the Lady Raiders went into the game without Bailey Blair because she had a stomach virus that a lot of folks are getting right now here in the county. So you're without your star point guard, a girl who's averaging about 18 points per game. And they beat Eagleville by 26 points. I believe the most anyone had beaten Eagleville by all year. And also, they scored a season high 66. I mean, I think for me, what's so important about that game is I think that, kind of us who are watching from the outside probably knew they had it in them because you think about all the pieces we just talked about. But I kind of think that it was important for the girls to see it too.
Oh, absolutely. It's we all go back to the proverb of, seeing the ball go in the basket. You know what you're capable of, but now I'm seeing it. It's in flesh and blood. It's happening. So I think for Richland in that case, they see that you can have a man down, in this case a woman down, that averaging that many points a game, a clear leader, experience, all those things that you want in a guard, a point guard, and yet they don't really miss a beat. Who was her sub for that? Who filled in for her in that position?
So they start Danny Lynn when she's out.
Okay. wow, and the size and presence that she brings.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think
Wow.
about the size there. I mean, granted, assuming that we're counting traditional positions,
Sure.
your 3 there is Mary Avery McNeese. Really, I would say your 3 there is Danny Lynn Galloway. Your 4 is Mary Avery McNeese, and your 5 is Kate Kirk.
Yeah.
All of those players, really, really great size, all great defenders. You know, that was something coming into the season that I thought was an interesting storyline, was because Danny Lynn Galloway is playing so well, it's so hard to keep her out of the starting lineup. But it really depends on the matchup, I think, because Bailey Hollis, who I think is probably the player who would be either her or Danny Lynn, depending on what kind of matchup they want. Hollis is so fast. She's so good with the ball in her hands, plays truly elite defense. And so it's so hard to take her out. But Galloway has now had 3 consecutive games with double figures in points, 2 of those off the bench. And so now it's so hard to keep her out of the lineup. They really just, I mean, I think this is a deeper team even than last year's semifinal run there. So you just think about how many different players they have who at this point, you're struggling to decide who's even going to start for you because you have a backup like Danny Lynn Galloway playing so well. And maybe they like her in that reservist role. Maybe she's the 6th man of the year kind of thing, but really just so impressed by all of them and them coming together the way they have.
It's to go the Christmas route. It's the gift that keeps on giving all year. I think for Coach Hall, he is thrilled to have this kind of talent pool to draw from.
Absolutely. I mean, and then you look beyond that with players like Hallie Bratton has had some really good minutes this year, especially defensively there, hits a couple key shots. Lily Lancaster comes in and plays some guard play there too. And so, you know, in basically every game this year, they're running about 8 deep. And then, you know, depending on the situation, they'll run a little deeper sometimes. But, I mean, at this point, though, them going in, Bailey Blair doesn't play, and they play like that. I just think it's important for some of those players. I think when we talk about what happens in non-district play right now, you want some of your younger players, the sophomores, to expand their roles, to continue to get better. You want the Kirks, the Galloways, the Gordons, maybe Hollis to an extent. I know she's a senior, but this is her first year in a starting role, even though she played a lot of minutes the last couple of years. You want those players to come more into the roles, maybe score a little bit more and take some of the, kind of pressure off of both Blair and McNeese, who have been the 2 leading scorers. And I think that's going to be one of the big keys for the late run is, can some of those players go from scoring 2 to 4 points a game to be scoring 8 to 10 points a game, maybe on the right nights, and really fill out that scoring load on a team that already has a truly elite defense?
Yeah, I think in many respects, when you can do that, I think it's just point by committee, spread the wealth around, and they certainly have the talent and depth to do that. You know, as you mentioned, those great leaders that they have. You know, if you can take a little bit of pressure though off of them, I think it makes for a smoother time there in the trenches there, depending on the opponent. But again, it's a great problem to have if you're the Lady Raiders.
So they won 66-40 over Eagleville at home without Blair. And then they went to Lawrenceburg. Of course, they'd already beat Lawrenceburg once this year. I believe only by 4 points. 6 points? 6 points last time. Then they go into Lawrenceburg, which, by the way, the Ralph, a tough place to play. You're playing a really strong 3A program historically. I know Lawrence isn't probably quite as good as they were 3 years ago, but they're still a very competent team this year. Look at the teams they've lost to. Lincoln, consistent power. Yeah. Loretto, Summertown, Richland. Every team you've lost to, if you're Lawrence, is a very, very high-quality team. I think they're not getting the credit they deserve because Lawrence has played such a tough schedule. Just how do you feel about the Lady Raiders going in and winning 50-39 last night over a Lawrence County team that, once again, I think is underrated, Dylan?
Yeah, they come in at 6-5, a little bit up and down there. They did have some struggles with what I would say are some pretty scrappy teams, pretty aggressive teams. I think on Lawrence County's side, I think they're trying to find themselves in that regard, that playing with a somewhat reckless abandon, if you will. But I was interested to see how they would respond here, hosting Richland now at home. A little bit of a home Christmas crowd, I guess. But just seeing Richland coming in, pretty neck and neck, back and forth in the first half. I think you start to see a little bit of separation there in the second half. But going in, I was curious to see, from my perspective as a Lawrence County faculty member, and just seeing some of those kids that we see day in and day out, how would they respond being at home this time? And again, a pretty tight game overall there. I think the spread was a little bit more at the end than what it was when Richland hosted at home. But as you say, another tough opponent. Richland's a quality opponent basketball-wise, always have been under Coach Hall. And, I think historically, as you mentioned, these are two programs that are well known as girls programs in the region, and so I think they delivered pretty well last night here in this as they close out non-district play.
So Lady Raiders 7-1 on the season, playing one of the toughest non-district schedules in Class A. And of course, we're about 2 weeks away from the start of that district run, which is going to involve another potential top 5 team in Class A, Moore County. So a lot of cool things down the pipe for a Richland team that is coming off a state semifinal run there. Now looking at the boys' side, they're 5-3 on the year, have some big victories, but really I think from last week's show to this week's show, it really still shows that week to week, there's still some things that need to be worked on. Because, last week, we're talking about them going up to Cascade and winning easily, and then welcoming a Wayne County team that has an all-state player in Cayman Camfield and beating them by 18. And so at that point, they're 5-1 on the season. They beat a couple really good teams. And then last week, they ran into the number 1 team in Class A in the entire state, which basically Eagleville returns everyone they have. Also of note, interesting side note for those who probably haven't been paying as close of attention, that is now 3 different all-state players that Richland has already played this year, because they played Mason Tidwell of Loretto. You're probably familiar with him.
Yeah.
Cayman Camfield of Wayne County, which Wayne County went to the semifinals last year in the state. And then also this time around, they ran into Camden Cole, who is going to probably be a Mr. Basketball favorite this year in Class A for an Eagleville team that, goodness, if there's a better team in Class A in December right now, I'm not sure who it is. And so they come into that game, they fall 69-34. They kind of struggle offensively. They give up some three-pointers, and they really don't, play the defensive game that I think that Coach Lovelace was hoping. And then, of course, last night in this week of Christmas, they played at Lawrence County, ended up losing that one by, I believe, is it 21?
Actually, they pulled to within, I want to say, about 11 or so. It was much closer than
okay. My apologies.
They did make a comeback.
Dylan and Jennifer did the game. I was about to say I didn't get a chance to watch the whole game there. I just watched the beginning of the girls' game. But, a Lawrence County team that has a couple key starters back, but also at the same time was 0-11. So just really, what were your initial thoughts about Richland and how you think they may be able to get out of this funk?
Yeah. I had not been aware of the Eagleville result there until Jennifer shared it with me last night. And going in, what was the makeup going to be? What's the psychology of a team like that where you have done very well starting 5-1, and then Eagleville comes in, you're at home, and you just don't play your best ball. Granted, it is the number 1 team in the state. So naturally, you're going to get hit in the mouth. How do you respond? And so going in, you got this 0-11 Lawrence County team who just wounded, literally, as far as missing some senior leadership there, which they have gotten back in the last week. And going in, I thought, this is a good chance for Richland going into a tough environment and just getting back to what they're known for under Coach Lovelace. And I don't know what happened there on that end of things, but Lawrence County met them at the point of attack in every facet of the game in the first half. Ended up being a 29-25 Lawrence County lead going into halftime. And I told Jennifer last night, we were discussing halftime and coming back out, what's Coach Lovelace saying to him. And I told her, I fully believe that the Richland of old is what we're going to see coming out of this second half here. And Lawrence County exploded in the third quarter, as Jennifer said, on a 28-10 third quarter performance, and which blew me away. I had gotten so into just the general happenings of what was going on, I had not really paid attention to the score. But that was the best quarter I think they've had, the Lawrence County boys have had all year so far, where they've struggled to have those kind of quarters. And to do it against Richland, I think Richland was a little bit shell-shocked. Obviously, Richland's usually on that end of things.
Right.
Dominating. I told Jennifer, the pacing seemed a little bit off. That flow that you look for in a basketball game just didn't seem to favor Richland for much of the night, whereas it did favor Lawrence County. It was a drawn-out, more of a heavyweight fight type of first half. Second half, I think the third quarter, of course, is where they got that big separation, and Lawrence County went up by, I think, about 21. To Richland's credit in the fourth quarter, stepping up defensively, I think for Cooper Jackson, getting 7 points there, spurred them on there to cut it to within 9, I believe it was. Ended up falling by 11, of course, simply because time ran out. You wonder if there's a little more time, if they're able to cut that down even more. But, Lawrence County rose to the occasion against, I think, a very good Richland team that's still trying to find itself. You get down a little bit. think it's more of a psychological issue than it is a talent issue. We know the talent is there.
Right.
And so, still non-district, and I think for Coach Lovelace, it's, how do you respond on a 2-game skid? This is not the end-all be-all here. You're going to get better. It's, what you're capable of. You've seen yourselves at your highest point. And now maybe, at this point, this is your lowest point. How do you respond coming out of the Christmas break? Of course, with the Christmas Classic coming up and district play, we'll see very shortly.
Well, you make the point there about, how does this team respond? Once again, this is a lot of guys who have played a lot of basketball. But one of the things that we talked about in the preseason was they hadn't all played in the current roles they have to play this year. Because, last year, of course, they had Andrew Huff and Carter Edwards and Luke Jones, who were kind of the senior leaders there. You had a couple guys in the starting lineup. I believe it was usually Jamison Andrews and Cooper Jackson there. I think Cade McCormick got a few starts last year. But really, to that point, suddenly the makeup of this team is a lot different. But there are two sides to that. One, I think their floor last year was a little higher than it was this year. But I think how good they could be this year, I think the ceiling might be higher this year than it was last year in terms of if this team comes together. Because you think about all the pieces you saw last night. Jamison Andrews, Will Shirey, Cooper Jackson, Cade McCormick. Those are all 4 all-district type players on the right night. Now, for me, I think a lot of it is putting the right night together for all 4 guys the same night. And I'm not sure if we've seen that too much this year where everyone was on at the right time.
Yeah, I kept getting drawn back, and Jennifer mentioned him a lot last night. Cade McCormick and just what he's blossomed into. I remember last year getting a lot of playing time, a few starts, as you mentioned, but this time, you see that presence. He's a big guy. They trust him on the outside. They trust him at the free throw line, clearly. Coach Lovelace pulling his guys over while he's shooting. He's a very talented player, but, like you said, having those off nights where a lot of them were just simply rim outs, something that Lawrence County was struggling with in Linville when they played. And now this time, I guess it might have been Richland's turn as far as just failing on the front iron there. And, wasn't his best night. He was effective at times. But, as you mentioned, putting that all together, all in the same night, I think in Lawrence County's case, they did it all in that one quarter, which really got that big lead. I think for Richland, we've yet to see that, but we know what they're capable of, as you pointed out, with those 4 great players.
And talking about McCormick, we mentioned this last week at Cascade. He went up there and had 28.
There you go.
At home versus Wayne, he had 23. And so, he scored 51 points in 1 week the week before.
Wow.
And, I think he's one of the best post scorers that, I've only been covering this team since 2014. So it's only been 11 years. So there obviously have probably been some better over the course of Richland history. But during my time covering, I'm not sure if there's been a better just when you talk about offensive skills in the post than Cade McCormick. Now, he'll get in a little foul trouble occasionally, but, just so impressed with him. But the other guys, they're right there too. And the depth is getting better every week. But this is my question for you. Obviously, 2 tough losses. If there was going to be a time of year, though, where this was going to happen, don't you think this is probably where you want it? You haven't entered district play yet. It's the idea of don't peak too early. Well, you're having a little bit of a pit here in December, but there's nowhere to go but up. And so it kind of feels like you don't want a moment where you have 2 straight games where you really underperform. But if it had to happen, it feels like this time of year is when you'd want it to happen, Dylan.
Well, certainly. If you don't want it at all, as you said, as a coach, but if it's got to happen, if you got to have the human element in this, let's go ahead and get it over with. Let's have the low point now before district play so that we're setting ourselves up to be highly seeded in the tournament in postseason, because ultimately that's what they're playing towards. And so it is early enough. Basketball, of course, as we know, is a long season, so many games. And so if you're going to have, I guess, you got your peak, you want to peak too early, you certainly want to be careful if you're going to have a dip when that happens. And so I would argue, of course, I think this is it right now for them, and that they can take this Christmas break, enjoy the food, enjoy the presents, enjoy family, and just have that time to just reorient themselves, come back, and then, kind of find that place to land here with the Christmas Classic coming up. But certainly they are capable, as you pointed out, with Wayne County and those type of performances. We know how far, I think we have a pretty good idea of what this team is capable of getting into district play and beyond district play in February. So we'll see.
And of course, this is their first year going from District 10 to now District 9. Some new teams out there because, now they're playing Moore County, Cornersville, Huntland, Fayetteville City. I may be missing one there. But I think this district really favors them this season. I think that if I had to pick an early favorite, I think it might actually be the Richland boys there. And so, I really think they're going to bring it back. I think they're going to get a really good seeding going to the postseason. And there's no reason that I don't think that they're going to come back from this, get everything back together, and be the team that we really thought they were going to be this year. And so, once again, Lady Raiders 7-1, Raiders 5-3, both looking pretty good as we get closer and closer to district play. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick timeout, and we'll be back with our college football segment here on Beyond the Box Score.
For a new job, let M&M Staffing be your guide. With over 20 years of experience, we know how to connect great people with great opportunities. We work with over 80 companies, so we're sure to find the perfect job for you. Our team is dedicated to helping you succeed, and our high customer satisfaction rate proves it. Ready to get started? Visit us at mnmstaffing.net or give us a call today at 931-347-4255.
Gas Department of Pulaski is here to help you save money. Natural gas is safe, efficient, and cost-effective. It's up to 50 to 60% less expensive than electricity for home heating. Plus, it's clean and efficient, so you can feel good about your choice. Call us today for service or visit our website to learn more. Make the switch to natural gas and start saving today.
And we're back here for our final segment on Beyond the Box Score. I'm your host, Mark Mize, joined once again by Dylan Manus. Dylan, it's been an interesting year of college football. We just had the first round of the playoffs, and it's been a lot of fun. As I say, any takeaways from this first week's matchups?
I think it's still a learning process as far as how they want to seed teams. I think you're always going to have the legions of the complainers that will always be there no matter what. And of course, they're already calling for changes as far as group of five teams are concerned, as far as getting an automatic qualifier, things like that. So I think that's really been the big takeaway, was that you had a good Miami Notre Dame. That's reliving history. Miami Texas A&M. Feel like a Big Ten matchup almost, that 10-3 top score. And but for two of those other matchups, it's just a glaring. Those scores are big blowouts, and I think for a lot of fans and media, we don't want to see blowouts. We want to see tight ball games. The best of the best. And I think that's where everybody is right now, thinking about how can we get them more competitive there, even in the first round.
Well, I think a standard year, of course, you wouldn't be seeing two group of five teams.
Right.
The only way you did was because, remember, that the top conference champions get that, top five. And unfortunately for the ACC, their conference champion was not their best team. Miami was their best team, which, by the way, moved on to the second round. But Duke, with 8-5, I believe they were, that just wasn't good enough to get them high enough in the rankings to surpass both Tulane and James Madison there. And so you got a couple weird matchups. But the thing is that I always tell everyone is there is no perfect playoff system, and we're always going to be arguing about who got left out. People were sitting there saying, oh, well, once we go from 2 to 4, it'll be equitable and we won't have that. And people won't be complaining. Well, if we go from 4 to 8, if we go from 8 to 12, there's probably not a number. If we went 64, which will never happen in football, it would be just too much on the athletes most likely. But if we ever got to 64, people would be arguing about the 65th team. And so, this week, whenever me and Cody Derryberry in the group chat were sitting there, Wade Neely always kind of, is there to moderate between us. We're sitting there arguing about whether or not Vanderbilt would have done better than Texas A&M did versus Miami. And I was like, well, I mean, look at this about Vanderbilt. They haven't beaten any teams this year that are currently ranked in the top 25. Their three best wins were over Tennessee and Missouri and LSU. Three good teams, but, not truly elite teams. And he was like, well, look at what A&M did against. And finally, Wade said, this is truly college football that you're arguing about which team should be in because they're the most mid. And so, to some extent, that's true. Yeah. You're always going to have an argument about who should be the last ones in there. And so we're going to talk about a couple different college football stories, though, that don't have to do with the playoffs. First, kind of an interesting one, and we're talking about it because we're in Tennessee, but, we had the Heisman ceremony as Mendoza, of course, ends up winning it there for Indiana. I had a great year there. Indiana went from a great year last year to really a transcendent year this year to get the number 1 seed, to beat Ohio State in a good game there in the Big Ten Championship. And one of the funny things is you saw over the course of the Big Ten Championship there where the betting odds changed based on how well they thought the players were playing there. And so there was a moment where Diego Pavia looked like, because neither Mendoza or San had really taken it, that Pavia might sneak in and win it. Of course, that's not what happened. Fernando Mendoza there ends up winning it. But Diego Pavia finishes second. And then there's a little controversy because he didn't exactly take the loss well, Dylan.
He didn't. That's all I have to say. No. As a Tennessee fan, I'm sitting back going, wow, is this what Vanderbilt has come to now? Look what NIL has done to Vanderbilt. This is the face of your program. And I say that almost tongue-in-cheek because obviously Vanderbilt historically has always been, we consider them the most academic of the institutions, just like Northwestern in the Big Ten or whatever the case may be, whatever conference you have all your big sports teams that dominate certain arenas, and then you have your academic schools. But in this case, Vanderbilt is the poster boy for NIL, what they've been able to do. Bringing over all those New Mexico State players, of course, and Jerry Kill, good coach in his own right, joining that staff. And, of course, that's when Pavia made the move. But certainly I think we'd all agree Pavia is a talented football player. Wherever you put him, he's going to give his all. He's a high school champion wrestler, if I remember correctly. The guy's a competitor. And part of competing is talking season, which usually happens before the first kickoff of the year. With Pavia, though, I think talking season continues well into the year, of course, after several games have been played. And, of course, his play did demonstrate that on the field consistently throughout the season, although there were times where he would say a few extra words and then basically forced to eat them, against teams like Alabama, where we're going to go down, he says, and we're going to do this to them. When it was Vanderbilt, they got pushed around. And he struggled, made some mistakes. And, we typically see players that come back from that and, okay, I didn't do my best. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to, keep my head down, keep on going. And certainly, against Tennessee, he kept saying this is what we're going to do. And they come out, particularly in the second half. He did not have a good first half against Tennessee, which I do want to make that point. But in the second half, he ran all over Tennessee's defense. And, let's put a spy on him. Okay, let's not put a spy on him. Let's leave the middle of the field wide open. He takes advantage of it. Has a great second half. I think that kind of spurred him on there to make it into the top 4 or so of the Heisman candidates there. It's a great honor, of course, to be there. Very few players ever get this type of opportunity to even be considered for this great Heisman fraternity. And part of, I think, what the voters look for, yes, obviously talent and your overall body of work, but also will you represent them well? Very much like a pageant.
Yeah.
In that regard, except this is for football players, naturally. And it's my understanding that the voting scores, how they tally them, there was a large gap between Mendoza at number 1, winning the trophy, and then everybody else. Now, to Pavia's credit, he does finish second. Great season for him, 10-2 Vanderbilt. In the modern era, the best Vandy team we've seen. And then in the next 24 hours, I think going back to what we know about Pavia, I think his emotions got the better of him a little bit there. In some situations where social media reigns, where 20 years ago, the information we're getting on Pavia and his reaction over the next 24 hours wouldn't have been noticed or, I guess, exclaimed as loudly. You can get by with it more in the 90s and early 2000s before the modern cell phone that fits in our pocket started to take over. And now everybody has social media at their fingertips, regardless of what you use to promote your brand. And I think people saw within 24 hours he was hurting his own brand and trying to market himself. It came off very off-putting, I think. You even in loss, you don't win the trophy, you congratulate the other players. It's an honor to be here, and you want to represent your institution well. Whatever school you come from, and certainly for Vanderbilt being in the spotlight, it's a big moment for them too. And I think it hurt. I think it gave a bad impression there. I think in front of the whole country, really, that has access to social media. I think that hurt him. And we saw by Sunday night, he's walking it back. And what's on everybody's mind? Who told him to do that? Somebody's trying to rein him in. Hey, now, okay, you blew up. We know how you feel, but you got to show some respect here. And sure enough, he comes out in his statement and credits Mendoza and the voters, and he does toward the end of that little statement he made. Now I'm a competitor and I'm going to compete, and we expect nothing less from that. But I think it's how you go about, even as a competitor, respecting your opponent, no matter what, no matter where you ended up, and because that's going to follow him if he does get a chance in the pros, whatever that looks like. And it's something that can be overcome. I think it can be, but as we know, it can take years to build a good reputation. it takes 10 seconds to ruin it. And of course, that doesn't matter what job or field you're in. It can happen to any of us if we're not careful. Now, so I think for Pavia, it's a good lesson for us in how to accept being in second place and still being respectful and maintaining your character.
Yeah, and all year, some of the antics came to the point where you're kind of wondering how you feel about them because, without a doubt, he elevated Vanderbilt's play. I will say, I think this Vanderbilt team probably goes 7-5 without him because they were actually a really good Vanderbilt team. It wasn't just Pavia, but I think the difference between maybe 7 and 10 wins probably is the Pavia effect there. But if y'all don't know what we're referencing, basically that night on social media, Pavia posted a picture in which it said F Indiana, which I don't really know what Indiana did to him there. And then had another one where it was actually an explicit post from him there where he actually had typed the words. And basically it talked about family, of course, with his brothers, and then also said F the voters, kind of thing. And so, the interesting note about this, though, is two things. One, I kind of feel like Pavia got a lot of the benefit of the doubt because he was doing it at Vanderbilt. I don't think his stats were truly transcendent to probably get him to second place. Because you look at, don't you think he's getting let me say this. Vanderbilt, when it came to making it to the playoffs, got a little bit of a, cut when it came to people like, well, they're Vanderbilt, will they compete? I don't think they got the benefit of the doubt when it came to getting the final spot. But I think by the opposite, while they were the negative beneficiary of that, I think he was the positive beneficiary of, oh, well, they're Vanderbilt when it came to the Heisman voting because people were thinking him doing it at Vanderbilt makes it more special and probably gave him a boost when it came to the final voting rankings there. Because once again, you look at other guys, was he that much better than Gunnar Stockton? I don't really think he was. I think Stockton had a great year. I think you look at what Georgia did coming all the way back to win the SEC there. I think that a guy like him, you looked at it, if you could look at it in a vacuum, just looking at the team's records, their success, and the stats, I think, you might give him the benefit of the doubt there over Pavia. But I think playing for Vanderbilt helped his Heisman case. And so I think that there was a little bit of that. But my second question is, I always felt like he was a bit of a marginal prospect when it came to the NFL because he has a little bit of a gimmicky play style. A little bit like Johnny Manziel, maybe not quite as dynamic, but I would compare him more to Tim Tebow. Someone who is almost just designed in a lab to exploit college defenses. But that's not really how the pros are played there. Their expectations in terms of the height of a quarterback, the style of play, some of the intangibles such as, hand size, throwing velocity, obviously the throwing motion you have there too, things that Tebow just didn't grade out as well on. And of course, you see how that worked out for him in the NFL. I always felt like Pavia was probably a marginal prospect. Right now, I looked this week, the highest projection I could find, which I was surprised there was one this high, was third round, and the lowest projection was undrafted free agent. Yeah. So do you think that the projections we're seeing now, and potentially where we see him going, do you think that could have been affected by his antics after the Heisman ceremony?
Absolutely. I think what we saw with Shedeur Sanders' draft stock last year, his family was proclaiming him to be the second coming of Red Grange or whatever player from yesteryear that we wanted. I might be a little too old there, but and then what happened? The draft became the story of Shedeur Sanders and his humbling in a way. Nobody wanted him, and some people brought up the idea. It's not that he's not a good athlete; it's the baggage. Could that be a similar thing here? Possibly. The baggage, as far as his family and the attention he gets for good or for bad, but certainly with NFL teams, it is a business. And you are representing a particular franchise. And you certainly don't want a divided locker room in the NFL. You want people to go about their business, nothing over dramatic. Just keep your head down, keep working. And does it hurt Pavia or does it have the potential to hurt Pavia? Absolutely. Could a team take a chance on him? Sure. Last year it was Cleveland that took a chance with Shedeur Sanders. And so, of course, with sports, there's always going to be characters and people that are big talkers and look at me, and that's part of the grandstanding that comes with sports, and it's not just limited to fans grandstanding about how my team can beat up your team. It's also players. And so, do I think it hurts his stock a little bit? I do.
Well, Shedeur has vindicated himself a little bit with his play once he got into a starting role, kind of proving that he deserved to be there. And Pavia is going to probably have the same opportunity. To me, he's probably a 6th or 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent. But if he is, he's going to be a preferred undrafted free agent, in which, you know how usually within 1 hour of the end of the draft, you're already hearing about the undrafted free agents that were signed because they had calls in. They're like, hey, if you don't get drafted, we want to be the first in on you. He's going to make it to camp. Sure. Someone's going to take a chance to get him to camp and see what he can do from there. So he's going to have the opportunity to prove that he can replicate this at the next level. He also is a little old for a prospect. I think he's 25, if I remember correctly. And so, with limited size and also being 25 years old, that's kind of tough to overcome there. But, if he's the competitor that he says he is, and at times he's proved it, that he is, I think he's going to get an opportunity there. And, a few years from now, we may not be talking about this because, one, we're not thinking about him anymore because he's fallen out of the league, or two, because his success in the league has kind of put this in the rearview mirror. And so I think that one of those two things is probably going to be happening. I don't think this is a story that's going to be one that we're going to be remembering years from now. The last segment we have is a little more interesting one, and it comes down to the NIL. So last week, we got a story in which the University of Georgia sued Missouri edge rusher Damon Wilson II, who, of course, is a former Georgia player. And what they were suing him for was breach of contract, because they were saying he had already signed his new deal with Georgia. He was owed $390,000 and that he was on the hook for that money. This week, Wilson has struck back and countersued the University of Georgia, saying that they didn't put him into the transfer portal immediately because they were trying to keep him, and also that they lied and told teams that if you sign him, he owes us $1.2 million. And as a result, trying to deter teams by falsely telling them not the $390,000 amount, but the $1.2 million amount, which would make teams less likely to potentially want to sign him in the transfer portal there. And so just a really interesting situation. Kind of just to set this up, Dylan. One, you have a team who is suing a player for breach of contract, something that hasn't happened in this format yet.
Right.
Two, they're suing him for more money than they ever gave him because he had not made $390,000 yet in his first 2 years on campus for Georgia. So they're suing him for more money than they paid him. And then three, that you have a player who's saying, wait, it's defamation because of what you said about me. You hurt my potential future earnings by lying about what the amount that I potentially would owe you anyway. And by the way, his reading of the contract, he's suggesting that he doesn't owe them that money anyway. And then they're also going to probably challenge whether it's even legal to try to arbitrate this amount of money back. And so just what are your initial thoughts about what's, I think, going to be a really messy situation, but also potentially a landmark and precedent-setting situation between Georgia and this former player?
Yeah, one of the many great hiccups in this era of college football where no one knows what they're doing because it's never been done before.
Yeah.
We don't know what direction this will take. Both parties looking out for their own interest. The fact that you have unlimited transferability, that you have these collectives really independent of the university that are making these deals. In Georgia's case here, the Classic City Collective doing this with the whole $390,000 in damages. So it's not directly the university,
right,
but it's a collective that, in a sense, is can we say front man for the university? I hate to say it that way.
They're representing the university.
Yeah, sure. And this is not the last time we're going to see this. Obviously, both sides trying to protect themselves. Do I think both sides really have an argument? I mean, it's Georgia. They are very blessed with the fandom and following that they have as a national program. I don't think they're going to hurt from this one particular player here. Of course, this player, Damon Wilson II, he's arguing that they tampered with his ability to enter the transfer portal and put his name out there, see what's available. Can you argue that this is just revenge of the institutions now? If these players are going to do this to us, we're going to be ready, and we're coming after you now. It's sad, Mark, that in the grand scope, that this is where we are now, that there's a discrediting now, there's a mistrust of institution and player, unlike what we have ever seen in collegiate athletics, because it was never meant to be that way. Here we are, though. I think this player, and going to Missouri and what he's argued, maybe he has a case here. You got both sides trying to size each other up. Could it be that this gets settled in arbitration and avoids court? Maybe so. That would be nice. I do think it's a lot of grandstanding and some political theater happening with this. And as we've said before, I mean, this has not happened. Could the case like this set a precedent for what comes after it? I think it will.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say I'm not really opposed to the idea of being able to levy a penalty against if someone signs an NIL deal and then they leave for the transfer portal, a penalty existing, I have some sympathy to that.
Right.
Now, being able to sue them for more money than you paid them is pretty out there. I can't imagine that that's going to stand, and I don't really think that it should, because can you ask for the money back? Maybe. Can you ask them for more money than they made? That doesn't really seem like the kind of situation that we want to set up. And then finally, is this the one you wanted to pick? Because for Georgia, Damon Wilson II was probably going to be a fringe starter this year. I mean, he had a good sophomore season with Georgia, but if I remember correctly, he didn't start every game last year. He was a guy where he was really in the front rotation. But for Missouri, he's a third team all SEC kind of guy. For Georgia, he might not have even been one of their best two defensive ends. And so choosing to pick this fight, and once again, you made an excellent point there, that it is the collective, not necessarily Georgia that's doing this, but really the question is anything happening without, of course, the say-so of Georgia? Georgia obviously had some input on whether or not they went forward to this, because remember, it's a brand image issue for Georgia.
Yes.
Because, some people and some athletes, now suddenly you're thinking about, when I go to Georgia, I better be willing to stay 4 years because they may come after me if I don't. And, other SEC schools like Tennessee's probably going to, because remember, Tennessee this past week let someone out of their letter of intent. So Tennessee there is basically going to come in probably and say, look at the agency that we give you. We're not trying to hold you down to anything here. We are pro player, but Georgia, they're not. That's the kind of thing that a rival school is going to argue on the recruiting trail, which they always will. Sure. But, Georgia has taken a stand here, which may be important for their future, working with a collective. But also, they've put themselves in a little bit of a dangerous situation because of the potential brand image it causes. And also, they may lose here and then lose the leverage that they may have been, because they were threatening that leverage against Wilson. If you lose that leverage by losing this case, suddenly you don't even have the threat anymore.
Yeah. Somebody, either the institution, the collective, or, of course, the university, or the player is going to be the sacrificial lamb here.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point, Mark, in that someone was going to test this, because this is not the first time we've seen a team or a player leave within a year of his contract, and he took this much money while he was there, and now he's gone. We saw it with the Iamaleava brothers, both of them with Tennessee and Arkansas. His brother goes into Arkansas. He's there for 6 months, bolts, goes to UCLA to play with his brother. They didn't really pursue anything there. There was talk about Nico and Tennessee, if there's some kind of damage here. And, of course, Tennessee chooses not to fight that. And I think Tennessee was better off for it. It was going to happen. But you have a big program like Georgia, nationally recognized, a winning culture here with Coach Smart and that athletic department. I guess they thought this is the time to take that chance. We're big, bad Georgia. We'll see what happens. And how this turns out may, as you said, it may scare a few schools into how they approach this. It may not be done again. Or for players, be careful. This may be you in this regard, and you're having to fight for your playing and marketing life here in this regard.
Yeah, I will say, because remember, at the end of the day, college football is for the purpose of making money. No one wants to admit that, but that's just how it is, and that's the way it's always been to some extent. And I think fans are reacting negatively when it comes to some of the commercialization and the fact that now it's so hard to roster build or even pick your favorite players when they may transfer 3 or 4 times during a college career. And so I am sympathetic, once again, to the idea that something in place that would not cut out, because I think everyone should definitely have the right to transfer once. I mean, I honestly would be a huge fan of a one-time transfer rule. But being able to limit that a bit more, drain that back just a little bit more, I think would probably be big for the sport and for, fan sentiment. Oh, yeah. And so this might be a measure in which you could do that. But I don't think, based on my initial reading of the situation, that Georgia has really picked the right time or the right way to do it. And so I think that this is probably not going to work out the way that they're going to hope it is.
Mark, you said it beautifully. The where we are in college football, that balance there with the fandom and where we are with college football as a business. Always has been, maybe under wraps a little bit for many, many years though, as far as who's pulling strings and
Yeah.
who's giving a car and who's, you're getting more meals than you should, that kind of situation. What we see now, these big time NIL deals, then the sentiment of the fans where this is not what I grew up with. And you wonder how 5 years from now, 10 years, how does that look? Do you end up alienating your fan bases? Because this is not the way it was meant to be. It could be the direction we're headed. I know we do have a lot of people across the board. When you read social media, this is not the football or basketball or whatever college sport I grew up with. This is not the way it's supposed to happen. And they give the impression that they're becoming a little more apathetic, and you can't have that as a fan base.
Right.
I mean, the word fanatic, you have to care. And so I hope this is not foreshadowing the things that could be coming down the pipe in regards to NIL and transfer, but something has to be done. And hey, I concur with you. The one-time transfer rule, it worked for a long time. It was here until in the last 6 years. I think it might be wise to revisit it.
Yeah, and once again, I am all for agency when it comes to the players, and also I'm not opposed to them making some money. There have been some situations, you talk about guys who were struggling to, because with some of the older rules, you only got 2 meals per day during the week, how many you got on the weekend, all that stuff, that just felt unnecessarily, actually cracking down on it, and really didn't feel fair to players. And then really the biggest situation that told me that something was wrong was AJ Green sold his jersey to charity, for a charity basically, and because someone made money off AJ Green. By the way, it wasn't AJ Green back when he was at Georgia. Someone made money off him. He had to sit out either the first one or the first 2 games of his senior year just because he had given his jersey to be sold for a charity. I think it was a medical charity. And so, like sick children can't even make money off of you if you're a player, even though AJ Green didn't get any money from that. And so even his name and likeness being used to make any money for a good charitable cause was considered a no-no. And so we were in a system that was broken. But the current remedy doesn't feel right to me. There's a middle ground that I think we can find, that I think that all parties in which players have their agency, they have their ability to make some money, but also fans and schools have some ability to have some stability and, still have the college football that I think everyone wants. I think there's room for both.
Yeah, it's ultimately, Mark, as you were saying, I think it comes down to the battle of the brand. You got the brand on the front of the jersey, which is the logo, and then you got the brand on the back of the jersey, which is the last name, and that tension isn't going away anytime soon.
Well, Dylan, I think this is one of our longest ever college football segments, but man, I really enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. It's been great to come in and continue to discuss, I guess, one of our favorite pastimes, and wish you a Merry Christmas and a good break here.
Absolutely. And wishing a Merry Christmas to everyone who tunes in to Beyond the Box Score as well. Once again, it is the week of Christmas. Basketball is in the air here in the county as we're only 2 weeks away from the start of district play. And so want to give a huge shout out to everyone who helped with tonight's show. Of course, Chandler Harmon, my co-host, who appeared in a couple segments, as well as Dylan Manus. Jennifer Hawkins always helps us out. And then, of course, Scott Stewart, who is our producer. So once again, Giles County, Richland, no matter who you're a fan of, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And you've been watching Beyond the Box Score.